Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. The downgrade of Ghana's credit ratings by Moody's and Fitch has come with its own challenges for the country. But in all these things, how should things be managed to minimize the expected shocks for the economy? Or should it be business as usual, or things must change to restore investor confidence? And how are things should be done to bring everybody on board? Today on PM Express Business Edition, we'll be engaging the Deputy Minister of Finance, Madam Abnasi Asari, and also she is the Member of Parliament. And also we're getting more details as well for her in terms of what government is doing and what the ministry is doing to manage things in these times. This and other issues wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition. Be right back after this break. So welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the economy and the recent downgrade by Fitch and Moody's. And how should things be managed right now with all these comments about the economy and how it could have an impact on our bond trading outside? And how do we bring everybody on board to chart this new path? Madam Abna say is the Member of Parliament for Etiwa East and also the Deputy Minister of Finance. Madam, thank you so much for joining us on the PM Express Business Edition. How are you doing?
I'm well.
I know combining parliamentary work and ministry work, quite interesting, some would say.
Yes, but we are taking it in our stride.
Yes. In the midst of, one would say that the downgrade as you're going to talk about and all other developments as well, how are you personally managing things as well? And also dealing with the parliamentary pressures as well.
Luckily for us, this is our second term.
Yeah.
This is my second term in the ministry. And so we're using the experience that we gained in the previous one and the support that we have around. So it's going well. Interesting.
I mean, let me first get your thought. I mean, Moody's, Fitch, I mean, these are institutions that you've been working with for quite a long time. Yeah. And then we woke up one morning and we read reports about them downgrading us and all the rest, and the comments that post-commentary from government and even the ministry, some were saying that these were quite harsh comments. I mean, these are institutions that you'll be working with as long as you be participating on the international market. What do you say to those who think that the Ministry of Finance was quite harsh, quite tough, and even personalized attacks on analysts, some would say?
I don't think so. We all know the importance of these rating agencies. First and foremost, they inform the markets on the probability as to whether we will default in the payment of our debts or not. And then it gives investors an idea on how and when to invest in certain countries. So they play a very important role in the way we get inflows and the way we also are able to assess financing from outside our shores. And so all we're saying is that we have presented the information as it is and looking at the current situation in which we find ourselves. Prior to 2020, I mean, the economy was robust, inflation digits were in the singles, and we had an average growth rate of about 6%. Clearly things were really going well until the pandemic hit. And even with that, when you compare Ghana to Sub-Saharan Africa, at least we managed to post a positive growth in the year that inflation really hits the whole world. And we're doing everything possible to get back on track with the Ghana Cares and various other initiatives put in place by the government. And so all we're saying is that looking at the circumstances in which we find ourselves, not just us, but globally, we expected them to treat us fairly. And that is all we are saying, that we are sharing with the public what the kind of information we presented to them and what we were expecting. Let me give you a typical example. Joy FM, you work in the media space. And assuming internally, you know you have done what is expected of you. And during a rating, you expect some level of rating. And then it turns out that you've been rated way below what you were expecting. Isn't it only fair that you voice out your concerns and then try to let them know why you think you do not deserve what they gave to you.
Couldn't this be done behind the scenes? Some would say that behind the scenes, drawing your concerns, appeal and all the rest. Some people thought that the ministry was quite harsh and hard on these agencies with your comments.
George, I don't think so. Here is an economy that, initially when the pandemic hit, the first and foremost thing that this president thought to do was to save lives and livelihoods. And so we did everything possible. One was the assistance we gave to the businesses that, due to the COVID pandemic, saw some fall in their business. We also did a lot in the area of supporting with social interventions. We also did a lot with trying to increase the number of health workers. All these things do cost some monies. And so clearly, yes, we have seen our debt levels moving up, but we gave reasons why we see ourselves doing all these things. And then we gave reasons as to how we're going to get back on track with the Ghana Cares or Batampa program, where we have various models, one investing in agri, investing in industrialization, and all these things. And looking at our setting as an emerging economy, we were expecting something better than what they did, they gave to us. And clearly, there were 3 rating agencies. All of them gave us the same negative B, stable outlook. And so we were expecting Moody's to follow suit because we presented the same information and data to them. So all we're saying is that we expect you to treat us fairly, and we feel we haven't been treated fairly. And that is all we are saying. I think it's only fair and proper that we voice out our concerns. And let me also tell you that in 2015, 2016, when Ghana was downgraded during the NDC time, they also felt they hadn't been fairly treated, and they voiced out their concerns. Even the AU has come out to say that, look at it again, listen to what Ghana is saying.
Wasn't that engineered by Ghana? I mean, it was interesting that after the president made that statement, you had the AU also making that statement.
We are a member of the African Union.
And so you engineered to make sure those concerns are being made by them.
We did not engineer anything like that, but we are a member of the African Union. And they all know the circumstances in which we find ourselves now. And so we were expecting them to treat us fairly. That's all we are saying. So if, for any reason, you can come back and look at it and assess Ghana again, because you know the implications of these things. You know how it can affect us. And so all we're saying is that look at it again and treat us fairly.
Is the Ministry of Finance not setting, some would say, a bad precedent? So next year, 2 years from now, Ghana is back on track, rated B with a positive outlook. What will be the commentary by the Ministry of Finance?
George, listen to this. We have put measures in place. Like I told you about the Ghana Cares or Batampa program, to revitalize the economy and get it back to where it was before, and then from there move it beyond the current situation in which we find ourselves now. We have worked hard. There are other private businesses that are trying to set up, move on after the COVID-19 pandemic. So all these things will affect, because it's not just the government that assesses monies on the capital markets. Private companies also do. And so all these things affects private businesses. And private businesses are the businesses that government is hoping will ride on their backs to grow, to generate more income and revenue for the state, and then to help in the economic development. And so all we're saying is that, look at it again. We don't think we have been treated fairly, because it is not just Moody's. There were 2 other rating agencies, and they all came up with the same thing. We presented the same information. All we're saying is that, look at it again. But beyond that, what this government is doing is to work hard to make sure we get back on track, and then we continue with the development agenda.
What timeline? Because some would say that whatever a rating agency's work is subjective, like a lecturer at a university marking your papers and things that, oh, Madam deserves an A+ or something, and then Joe deserves an AC. Then there are clear marking schemes there. Some would say that we know what we have to do to get a positive rating. So if those things are not being done, why are we fighting the agencies?
It is not that those things are not being done. It's about industrialization. It's about moving the economy back on track. And how is this government doing that? This government way back saw that we needed to invest in human capital if we want this economy to grow and expand. And that is exactly what we are doing with the free SHS. The government sees to it that digitization would help us in the long run, one, to reduce and to improve on efficiency and then reduce waste. And that is what we are doing. We're trying to digitize our ports. Recently, was it last week, the Vice President launched the e-travel, where any public official traveling will no more be handed fiscal cash, but will be put on a card. And with these things, it's very easy to account for these things.
You think that it will bring some savings to the public purse?
And introduce efficiency. We're doing all these things, the digitization bits, the 1D, 1F, where we're trying to put up more industries and to help us reduce our dependence on imports. All these things are investment that will take time. It's not a one-day something. It will take time. But when you start enjoying the fruits, you see it all over. So all we're saying is that we are on track and we are determined to move the economy back on track and even beyond.
Are the ministries there? I mean, what timelines have you given to yourself that, listen, all other things being equal, whilst we are trying to fast track a fiscal consolidation program, dealing with revenue issues, expenditure issues, we are hoping that within the next 1 to 2 years, what we are doing should impact the agencies?
George, we are not doing this because of the agency.
Yeah.
It was an agenda that we set for ourselves in the short to medium term, that in this year, we are going to embark on expenditure rationalization. We are going to do everything possible to increase our revenue and reduce the revenue blockages and leakages in our system. We're going to do everything possible to improve upon our digitization, because we know that is what will improve on efficiency and reduce waste. And we're going to do everything possible to increase food supply, to curb the increasing food prices. So it's an agenda that we had already set for ourselves. We're going to pursue these policies and initiatives to make sure that we ourselves as Ghanaians, we get to where we want to get to. So in doing that, we believe it will go a long way to improve the economy and then get the economy on the right foot.
Maybe let me move away from just the rating agencies, but I'm just saying that for the ministry, maybe in terms of personal targets, that we are hoping that within the next 2 years, things will be back solidly on ground in terms of the fiscals, the revenue, and the numbers itself will speak for itself, that will convince investors out there that we don't need an agent to pay the verdict on that. Have you given yourself any timeline that, George, within the next 2 years, we are hoping that our fiscal situation is going to improve, the budget deficit to be improved, and all those things? Is there any timelines that the ministry is working, both the medium, short term?
George, in 2020, this government saw the need to set up the Ghana Cares Obatampa program. And this was the main idea, that we get the economy back on track. Like I told you, because of the COVID, our debt numbers went up. Our revenues, at that time, we had to go back to Parliament to reduce our revenues, looking at the situation globally. And then there were some expenditures that we hadn't budgeted for, but as a result of COVID, like the free electricity, the free water, the school feeding that we had to give to private schools, which under normal circumstances, we're just doing the school feeding for only public schools. And so many other interventions that we had to go through. So government came up with the Obatampa program, which is a 3-year program. We have the immediate and then the long term. So we began way back in 2020. And that is what we are focused on. It's a 3-year, 100 billion program where government will partner with the private sector. And so we are hoping that we began in 2020. We are hoping that within the 3 years, we would see very positive results.
So when I'm subjecting to street proof,
yes,
all other things being equal, we are hoping that by end of year 2023, the numbers itself will speak for itself. The fiscal situation should improve. Inflation should be within the single-digit band.
George,
this is the time that you are working with that. If I was setting a target for you, maybe as the president.
It's not about a time frame. Like I'm telling you, even this year on year, you see that our revenue we projected a 40% increase in revenue.
And it has happened?
No, for 2022.
Okay.
That is our target, that we're going to increase our revenues by 40% year on year compared to what we did last year. So we're doing about 80 billion of tax revenue for this year. And we're setting for ourselves that we'll do a growth rate of about 5.8%. We're setting for ourselves that we'll do...
The IMF is quite optimistic that we'll do 6%.
well, from our indication and everything, this is what we have set for ourselves. We set for ourselves that the deficit will be around 7.4%. So we're already on track. We are not waiting for anybody. And in the medium term, we are hoping that we'll bring our deficit levels back to 5% of GDP. So it's all set out. And when you pick up our budget, you see in there, this is what we hope to achieve. So we believe that this will go a long way, one, to help in our debt sustainability, will help with our physicals, and then in the long run, all the kind of growth that we want to witness in the economy, we're going to see that. And it will not just take Moody's to tell us. All of us will feel it, and we'll see it.
I mean, I'm trying to say that move away from what these rating agencies are saying, that medium-term target should materialize in 2023, if I'm right.
Why are you insisting on the years?
You may tell this guy maybe 2024 or something. So I'm just saying that there should be a timeline that we should all look at and say that, listen, the medium...
At the end of 2022, you can assess and see...
We'll start seeing the results end of year.
Whether the projections we made for ourselves, whether we've been able to achieve them. And I know we will be able to achieve them. Looking at how we have begun the year. Like I told you, we are embarking on... good revenue measures that will help increase our revenues and reduce our dependence on borrowing. And also we are embarking on expenditure rationalization, where we are cutting down expenditure and trying to improve the efficiency in the public financial management. So all these things will go a long way to help in our deficits. And then clearly, we know we're on target, and then we will get there.
So end of year, we should start seeing the results.
Of course. You can assess us by the targets that we have given to ourselves by
and if the numbers don't look like what we are looking forward to, what is going to happen?
It's not just about the numbers. It's about how the economy is feeling. You feel it. It's not just, like I tell you, it is not just about the numbers, but how well the economy is doing. Well, you say it will reflect in the numbers, but we should leave it for our people to see. Mid-year, we'll come to Parliament, and then you can assess us, that whether we'll be on track or not.
Do I get from you that apart from the strong fiscal numbers, that you are optimistic that by end of year, it also about it impacting on the pockets of Ghanaians?
So that is what I'm saying, that the people themselves will
start feeling it end of year.
They'll start feeling it because this year we're trying to embark on so many other things that will help in various ways to boost the economy. Ghana enterprises agencies, they've embarked on so many initiatives that one will help businesses, ailing business or businesses that were affected by the COVID, to start, rising up again. And not just that, with this program of the Youth Start, where government within 3 years is allocating 10 billion Ghana cedis and partnering with the private sector to put that amount of money in small-scale enterprises, as well as the youth, those who want to venture into their own businesses. Within 3 years, we should start seeing some results. We should start feeling some form of boom in the economy. And again, was it yesterday you heard the health minister saying that Agenda 111, within this year, they are embarking on the building of 67 hospitals.
Where is that money coming from, Madam? Sorry to interrupt, but because if you look at the budget and the challenges that we are going through now, one of the areas that some have said will suffer could be capital expenditure. I know you have budgeted for it all right, but looking at the way things are going right now, if there should be any cut, the first casualty will be capital expenditure. So where is the money going to come from to fund this
Not
agenda?
Necessarily capital expenditure, but for the funding. You remember we mentioned during the COVID-19 pandemic where we got some form of funding. We put 600 million down with Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, GIF. So we are partnering with GIF to support government to make this happen. So we have already made some allocations for GIF, and through that, they're going to work together with government.
So getting clarity is going to start this year, right?
Yes, and yesterday you heard the health minister.
And funding is available.
Yes, funding is available, and we're going to start with 67 of that. That is going to open up areas, that is going to bring up employment, and within that employment space, people are going to pay taxes, their economic power is going to increase, they're also going to, buy things that will affect our production levels as well. So it is not just things on paper, but things that the people in the economy will feel and know that really things are changing.
Let's come to expenditure. And some will say in a local parlance that whilst you're optimistic about things picking up strongly end of year and medium term, that that the first 2 months of the year, let's look at expenditure. And some are saying that that's quite a challenging area, that the test of this government is about renewing fiscal consolidation, all the rest. And they think that that area government has found itself wanting, struggling to convince Ghanaians that, listen, we are committed to fiscal consolidation. Government is committed to fiscal prudence and ensure that they spend and operate within its budget.
You're right, and I agree with you that is the aim of government. When you look at our budget for 2022, like I told you, we are hoping to increase revenue by 40% year on year. But when you check our expenditure levels, we increased expenditure by just 24%. Expenditure grew by just 24% compared to revenue that we are hoping will grow by 40%. Clearly, this should tell you that government is trying very hard to contain expenditure within its means. There are some things that government has embarked on that government cannot afford to fail, like the free SHS.
Even when there's no money? I mean, there were suggestions that, listen, let's share the burden. If my son is at the school, I cannot.
When there's no money. It's about investing in people, investing in human capital.
I know there are critical social intervention programs, but some are saying that when the purse is small, everybody has to take the bite of it.
Not just the free SHS, 1D1F, where we are helping to bring up factories across the districts, across the country, so that, one, we will reduce our dependence on foreign exchange, because if we don't produce them, we will have to import them. And also, create jobs for our teeming youth and anybody who wants to work. So it is not just that. In all these things, government is aware that it has to fund the 1D1F, has to fund the planting for food and jobs. Because, not having food is a security issue. And so clearly there are some things that government cannot afford to fail. So in the first quarter of 2022, per what the PFM will allow the minister to do, the minister has issued the various ceilings to the various ministries, departments and agencies, and letting them know the cuts that everybody has seen a 20% cut. Let me tell you that in terms of compensation and interest payments, those items are items that you cannot
cut. And sorry to butt in, Ma'am, but I mean, people are asking for some clarity. Looking at how tight and rigid the budget is, if you can help me, if not specifics, but which areas are this or is this 20% going to affect?
You should have waited for me to finish.
Sorry.
Apart from the interest payments and apart from compensation and statutory funds, which is a function of the revenues that we generate, all ministries, departments, and agencies have seen some cuts in the allocation. And usually, let me tell you, with the first quarter is more of planning. And so we want them to use this quarter to reprioritize their needs. So that this is what is going to be given to you or has been given to you for this first quarter. So look at your needs and prioritize them. Usually the first quarter is more of planning. And so in this planning stage, the finance minister is telling you that we have cut everybody's allocation by 20%, ministries, departments, and agencies. So this is what you have. So look within your programs and activities and reprioritize for the first quarter. So yes, we have been able to do that.
So I'm just asking that, so is it going to affect compensation within these ministries?
No.
Is it going to affect capital projects?
Compensation.
It cannot be touched. Cannot be touched.
Cannot be touched, as well as statutory funds payments, because it's a function of what comes in as revenue. But apart from that, all ministries, departments, and agencies, goods and services, and capital expenditure has seen some cuts for the first quarter.
It's going to affect goods and services.
Yes.
It's going to affect capital expenditure. Yes. And which other areas again? Because some of these foreign investors that...
No, the budget is made up of your compensation, your interest, your goods and services, and then capital expenditure.
Okay.
Yes. So goods and services and capital expenditure, yes.
Those are the areas that there's going to affect.
And it's across board, all ministries, departments, and agencies.
Sorry for some clarity. Have we been able to quantify this cut and the impact on our total expenditure? Maybe a round figure that because we are doing this, this is the savings that we are going to make to help us improve our revenue space in terms of how we can spend as well.
I cannot give you a definite, definite figure, but clearly I know that for Q1 we're doing around 24 billion Ghana cedis in terms of expenditure.
Cut.
No, in terms of expenditure for the quarter, we're doing about 24 billion Ghana cedis for that. Like I'm saying, usually the first quarter is more of planning and reprioritizing. So we are hoping that once we start like this, we reprioritize and then we spend on the most needed activities or programs, and then we avoid duplications. It will go a long way to save the ministries, departments and agencies monies, and they can use it to attend to a very...
How committed, and I know your senior minister has spoken about it, but how committed are you at the ministry level with all the pressures from all the quarters? Because every year we end up having a budget deficit, and therefore when there are issues about cracking the whip when it comes to expenditure, some people are very skeptical. How committed are you at the ministry together with the senior ministers to ensure that as we've announced this cut, if it's outside the budget, I would not approve the checks?
Let me just explain this. As for the budget deficit, it's already been approved by Parliament. So clearly there will be an overrun. 7.4% of that. And the deficit is just your revenue and your expenditure. So that's the difference. And it becomes an issue when you go over and above your deficits that Parliament has approved for you.
That's where there's a problem.
That is where there's a problem.
Can there be a time where we will strive for a balanced budget or even a surplus budget?
All across the world. I mean,
we see our time doing that.
It's not new. There's where, in times where everybody who works and is eligible to pay taxes will pay what is due the state, and also we will also introduce efficient measures in the way we run our expenditure. I believe we'll get there. But running a budget deficit is not a bad idea. But when you go over and above the deficit that has been approved for you, that is where it becomes...
Some are saying that looking at the size of our economy and looking at the deficit that we have been projected for this year, some are saying that financing the deficit, there's a problem there.
Not really, and that is why when you compare last year to this year, last year's deficit was about 41 billion. This year, the deficit has reduced about 35 billion. Clearly, you know that we are reducing, tells you that we are reducing the deficits. We are finding ways and means to fund our expenditures such that we are reducing the deficits. So we will get there. But in the meantime, there are structures and things that we need to put in place to make sure we maximize the needed revenue so that we can be able to someday match our revenues to our expenditures, even if not equally, I mean, very close, and then we'll have. But it's not bad to have a deficit, especially when you want to embark on certain priorities and certain projects. Like year of roads, last year, this year, we're embarking on the roads. We want to also try and complete as many of the hospitals as possible. We want to embark on our 1D, 1F. We want to continue to support the Planting for Food and Jobs program. We want to sustain the various initiatives like I mentioned, the free SHS that we have started, and all the other positive initiatives that with time will bear fruits for all to see. We want to continue with those things. And so if for that reason, we need to spend a bit more outside our revenue to be able to achieve these things, gladly we will do that. But the most important thing is that we should live within the deficits that we have set for ourselves.
Let's look at again a bit about the fact that there are loopholes again when it comes to the expenditure area and all the rest. How committed is government in dealing with that, blocking all those loopholes, perceive or the reality in terms of wastage in the system and all the rest? And some are saying that another area that we can see some more commitment And that could also send some positive signals to investors that this government means business when they say that they are doing XYZ.
George, and that is why we are strictly working with the GIFMIS, which is the software financial system that we transact our expenditures on. So now everything has been placed in there. So assuming your allocation
total 100%.
Assuming your allocation about 5 million, and you go beyond 5 million, the system will not allow you to move beyond that.
And you're strictly working with that.
It's been put in the system. So
designed by human beings.
Yes, now
designed by human beings, madam.
And it's been capped. It's been capped. So whichever MDA, if you go over and above that, you cannot even manipulate it in the system. It's not possible. But one thing that I think we should all, work towards is to try and live within the budget, the various budget allocations that have been given to the ministries, departments, and agencies. That is why there is a need to reprioritize our programs and activities. And for Q1, that is mainly what we usually do, that we plan our programs and activities. So by so doing, we try to eliminate the duplications, and then we only spend on the things that clearly we need to spend to help the government in growing the economy.
Madam Abinansi Asare is the Deputy Minister of Finance, and she's also the Member of Parliament for Etiwa East. And we're looking at how do you manage the economy in the midst of ratings downgrade, and how do you do things to send signals to investors out there that you are committed to fiscal prudence and value for money and spending wisely during this time. We'll take a short break, and when we're back, we're looking at revenue, rising debts, and the biggest elephant in the room, that is the e-levy. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about managing the economy in the midst of credit ratings downgrade. What should be done differently to bring about that investor confidence in our economy and even the broader Ghanaians as well to go with government in terms of policies, revenues, and commitment to be fiscally prudent, if I can say, and value for money. Madam Asare is the Deputy Minister of Finance and Member of Parliament for Etiwa East, and she's joining us in studio as we talk about expenditure, revenue, and all those things that they have to do, and the biggest elephant in the room, the e-levy. And thanks so much, Madam. We were talking about expenditure. Our debt levels. Some are worried that we could soon be classified as a distressed country. Some are saying that, no, George, we are not going to get there. The measures that we are taking will put us, the debt levels, on sustainable levels. I mean, what do you tell those who have seen, listen, we are heading towards that path of a distressed country?
George, we will not run away from the fact that our debt levels have gone up. And clearly, it's gone up as a result of several factors. And prominent among them is the COVID-19. We also had to sanitize the financial sector, and government so far has pumped close to about 25 billion in that area. We also were saddled with the energy costs that we have seen government also pumping about 26 billion Ghana cedis in that area. But aside that, government has borrowed for certain things that we see, they are visible around us. You look at the Pokwasi interchange.
That road is not being towed, and some will say that with some of these investments that you're doing, how are you going to recoup the money? If these investments were directed to sectors that will stimulate growth, we shouldn't still be talking about the debt stock right now.
And George, let me finish.
Okay.
You said the roads are not being towed.
I'm not seeing them,
It's bringing
sorry.
about efficiency. Previously, people were spending several hours in traffic. The number of hours you spend in traffic has reduced, and that will go a long way to increase productivity. So it comes out in other forms or in other areas. And again, we see lots of hospitals all around us. We see the 1D, 1F. We see so many infrastructure projects going on, especially on our roads, not just the Pokwasi interchange. You go to Tamale, you see, the only interchange in the northern part of our country is almost through, and I know that before the year ends, we would have handed it over to users.
That will be commissioned.
The Tamale, yes, interchange. Okay. And there are several other projects that are going on. And that aside, the COVID-19, George, like I told you, we had to spend on budget items that we hadn't budgeted for. The PPEs, the fumigation of the schools, and the fumigation of the markets, and all these things came at a cost. And the relief that government had to give to workers. And then, George, let me ask you, I'm sure in Joy FM, due to the COVID-19 and the fact that business wasn't coming as it used to during that time, you had to send 1 or 2 staff members home. As far as I'm concerned,
nobody was sent home. We're all working. We're still receiving our salaries.
In private companies, they had to close down, especially in private schools. You come to my constituency, some of the private schools had to shut down because the students were not coming to school and they couldn't keep their staff. But you ask yourself, government never stopped paying all the over 600,000 workers on government payroll. There was job security, and they continued to enjoy their salaries throughout the pandemic.
One would ask that, the World Bank, IMF, and other institutions supported you during this period. There's talk about auditing the funds. what's the status of that as you speak right now, the COVID-related funds?
First and foremost, let me tell you that every public fund is audited by the Auditor General at the end of the year. That is very clear, it's standard. It's by law, as prescribed by the Constitution. It is audited by the Auditor General every year. So clearly, audits are being done in various forms.
But the COVID one, there's some special attention.
I know there's a special call for us to audit the COVID-19. And I know that some work has started.
When is that going to complete?
I'm not on top of when it's going to be completed.
But work has started then?
But clearly, whatever funds that came in as COVID funds, we have already declared some to Parliament. And then we know that for those outside, the COVID fund that was set up, that is not within our control. So it's being controlled by a steering committee with its board of directors. And so that one will also be accounted for. But every fund that came through our system, that's through controller, will be accounted for, and for those that has been accounted for, it's in the budget. We did account for everything. But what I'm saying is this: so all these things put together has elevated our debt levels to a certain extent. And so when you look at the budget for 2022, it says building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation, fiscal consolidation, where we're trying very hard to live within our means. Like I told you, when you compare our growth of revenue to our growth of expenditure for 2022, expenditure is about 24% year on year, revenue is about 40%. It tells you clearly we're doing something about that. And also we are reducing our deficits. Last year it was a bit about, I think, 9.4% of GDP. And now we have come down to, with the energy sector and then the financial sector, it was about 12.1 to put together, it's about 12.1. We've come down to 7.4 for 2022. Clearly tells you we are trying as much as possible to contain our debts and then live within our means. Not that alone, we're also doing our best to reprofile some of our debts, try to come up with a very good debt management planning, so that even with the debt stock that we have, we would look and see which one we should hold and which one, if possible, compared to other types of debts in the system, which one is relatively expensive that we can exchange for relatively cheaper ones. So we're looking at all these things. But as much as possible, we are not going to increase the debts as we did way back in 2020, and then the times where we had to fund for the financial sector bailouts and then the energy sector
But Madam, some will say that if these, In economics, I mean, spending should stimulate growth.
Yeah.
If these monies were indeed directed to sectors or areas, some would think that the debt nominal terms should have been declining right now, because if businesses were operating, spending, that should impact on revenue. If these things went to sectors, that should stimulate growth. I mean, we shouldn't still be complaining now about the nominal numbers going up if indeed the expenditure targeted those right spots.
It did. The financial sector, we now have a robust financial sector. After government having spent 25 billion, we now see how the improvement has generated into profitability for these banks and access to relatively cheaper capital for businesses. And now there is hope that we can depend on our financial sector for growth. So government did spend some amount of money in there, and we have seen positive growth in there. When you look at the energy sector, it's the same. I mean, we no more see the doomsaw that we used to see some time back. It is due to the huge, investment that we've had to make in there by clearing most of the outstanding arrears that we came to meet. So clearly, we are seeing positive growth. You ask the business people previously how much they were spending on the cost of power, not just the normal ECG power, but they had to spend to buy fuel, to buy generators, to service these generators, and all these things added on additional costs. But here we are, electricity is relatively stable, and we have power continuously for our industries to work with.
So you think that these levels would start declining very soon or get into sustainable levels, and we are not going to get into the distress tag, because that review by the IMF and the World Bank is going on right now to see whether our levels are going to get it to that level that can be described as a distressed country?
No, George. Let me tell you that the provisional results that we have for our debts.
End of year? Since you have not released
December
the December
2021.
one. People think that you've crossed the 80 mark.
No.
Really? From what you've seen, we haven't crossed the 80 mark?
Provisional, yes. No, we haven't. We haven't at all.
Is it hinged on the economy growing?
79.6%.
79.6.
For the provisional figures we have for December.
End of December.
Our debt to GDP ratio is 79.6. Unlike what people are saying about 83 and
79.6, yes. Close to 80. What happened?
79.
Are some numbers being massaged somewhere?
We have never massaged any numbers. We always present the data as it is, and you can always compare.
Is it hinged on the economy expanding, and that is why the debt shrunk? Because some are.
It is not just the economy expanding, but like I told you, when you look at the levels at which we borrowed in 2020 and you compare to 2021, clearly you will see a dip in the levels of borrowing for 2021. This should tell you that right from 2021, beginning of 2021, we set out an agenda to contain our debts. And the IMF even said it, that even though our levels of debt has elevated, it is still within sustainable levels.
Let's look at revenue and e-levy. I mean, you're doing stakeholders. Some are saying that the pulse of the country appears not in favor of this tax. We hear the finance minister is going to relay the bill. Are we going to see the rate drop substantially to maybe like 0.5 or 1%?
The e-levy, electronic transaction levy, is one out of the many revenue measures that government brought to Parliament in the 2022 budget. We looked at several areas where we could, one, improve on efficiency, widen the tax net, and also increase the revenues that we generate. And government also gave out some form of revenue to help certain businesses in certain sectors to enable them compete with the imports of these things. A clear example is the textile industry. You know that for the past 2 years, government has granted the textile industry free VAT, such that they don't pay VAT on local textiles. And this enables them to, one, maintain about 25,000 employees in the textile industry, and also to be able to compete with the imported textiles that come into this country. This is one of the revenue measures that we took to Parliament, but I don't hear people say it.
Okay.
And again, we set out to make the VAT regime very, very simple for people who do about 500,000 Ghana cedis and below as turnover. They pay the 3% VAT levy, so that it will make it very, very simple and encourage them to also pay their taxes. This I don't hear people talk about. And when you look at our mining sector, the small-scale miners, we realize that our exports of gold, the declaration of exports of gold, had gone down drastically. And we found out that across the West African sub-region, our neighbors were charging between 0.5% to 1% on the export of gold. So we realized that a lot of our small-scale miners were smuggling or were passing through our neighbors instead of declaring the 3%. We were doing 3%. So government engaged them, and now government has brought the withholding taxes on export of gold from 3% to 1.5%. So government is also giving away something. But you hardly hear people talk about
because people don't see any challenge with those tax measures. But there's a tax measure that people think that it has a role to impact negatively on financial inclusion. It has a role to affect how far the country has come in digitization in terms of moving away from physical cash to electronic cash. And that is where the problem is. People see that tax that it is not widely spread, that it's only targeting a few number of persons. And that is why people are against it, people are demonstrating the pulses that scrap that tax.
George, let me tell you a recent report that came out, I think by the banks, was it last week or so, I saw in the Daily Graphic, that in 2021 alone, the amount of transactions that people used Momo for was more than 1.2 billion. 4 times that of checks. So you can't tell me that industry is a young industry. It's an industry that has come to stay. It's an industry that will grow. And government is saying, I want, one, to widen the tax net and rope in more of the informal sector. We believe that if we should go ahead and implement the electronic transaction levy, we will rope in about 85 up to 85% of the informal sector into, the tax net, and we'll give them the opportunity to also contribute what is due government. We are listening, government. We heard sentiments and concerns from stakeholders that we have engaged. And this afternoon, the finance minister was in Tamale.
Tamale.
Yes, to continue to engage with them. There are lots of misconceptions about the e-levy, but I believe that it is us all contributing in our own small way, because it's not a flat tax that whoever does it pays the same, but rather you pay, if you do more, you pay something slightly more than the person who is not paid.
But what I want to get understand that with all these stakeholder engagement, would that impact on the final document that the minister will table before Parliament that, George, we've heard the cry of people. We have several opportunities to come back mid-year, end of year to review this thing. We will start the levy at 0.5% or 1%.
George, we began the
since it's clear that the government is not going to scrap it yet. We began the rate at 1.75%.
Yeah. And the telcos were also doing 1% on each side. And during the stakeholder consultations, our people made us know that we should come down on the rates. We first engaged the telcos. The telcos came down on their rates by 0.25%. And government also, upon further consultations with various stakeholders, has also come down by 0.25%. So government the levy is now 1.5%.
Some are calling for more. With government going to look at, because the stakeholder engagement is still going on.
Yes.
Some are saying that, listen, show more commitment by bringing it down further. Are you going to look at that as well?
And that is what you are also saying. But what we are also hearing is this. we want to know exactly what you're using it for, and we want to follow through. We want more transparency and accountability, and that will make us appreciate this and embrace it. And that is what a section of people are saying. And we're telling them, one, we have stated clearly that amongst other things, we want to use it to help in the Youth Start program, where we engage the youth who want to go to start their own business. We engage them through some of the monies that will be raised to enable them as startup capital, to enable them also do their own business. One, we would also use some to reduce debt levels. And then finally, we will continue to embark on a road expansion, among other things.
So I get from you, madam, that it's difficult. We are not going to scrap this thing. But would the 1.5% be the final rate? Or since you're still doing the cycle, there was one intermediate today, we will see it drop into like 1%, if that is the pulse of the nation?
Currently, it's 1.5%. Like I'm telling you, it is
could we see that coming down?
Transparency and accountability.
So that's where we settled down on 1.5%.
It is not for me to take that decision.
Together with your minister?
It's a decision that the minister, cabinet will take.
If the minister asks you, madam, that we should look at 1%, is that something that you consider, tell him that, listen, based on all the extrapolations, let's go to 1%?
George, the truth is this. It is not about the rate, but it's about widening the tax net and giving people the opportunity to also contribute. Haven't you met someone who tells you, oh, I really want to pay my taxes, but I don't know when and how? Yes, so it's about giving people the opportunity to also contribute their quota. And you heard the finance minister say last time, if you contribute, you stand in a better position of asking me, what did you use this for? What did you use that for? And it's all about giving all of us the opportunity to contribute in a way that will help in our development.
Time is not our best friend, Mom. We have to drop the curtain. That has been PM Express Business Edition, as we talk about managing the economy amid the ratings downgraded. Consultation e-levy is still going on. We'll see how things will end. My name is George Yaffe. I've been your host for PM Express. Have a great day.